back to Teaching with Tenia. I have Miss L here. You want to introduce yourself and what you teach?
Hi, my name is Miss L. I teach second grade all content.
And how many students do you have?
34 on my roster.
Yeah, she is amazing. A little lifesaver. Today we're talking about how to teach students with trauma, because unfortunately a lot of our students do have trauma, and we're trying to provide a great quality education in spite of that. Today we're just giving some tips or ways that we have dealt with our students with trauma, and then hopefully you can learn or continue the conversation down below. Ready to get started?
I am.
Alrighty. The first way, I'm sure most of you guys already know this, is to create a safe environment for your students. How do you do that in your class?
We have a lot of routines set up. We have a lot of discussions on respect and how we talk to each other and how we treat each other. I have a set of class rules that talk about ways to be safe emotionally and physically in our environment. Sorry, just got it. No, it's hot in my classroom. I don't know why.
I love that. Routines are amazing. If you don't have routines in your classroom, then basically what are you doing? Because to be honest, if you don't have routines or procedures, your students are like, what's going on? And it adds more anxiety and adds to their behavior. I also have a cozy corner in my classroom where they could go take a break, take a timer, whatever they need to do just to recollect themselves, because like you said, they may not see that at home. So modeling a behavior or having discussions about what respect that looks like, because who knows if they even see it. So I'm glad you're able to do that.
Yeah. So the next way that we can teach students with trauma is to be forgiving and understanding. There is a lot mentally and emotionally going on that we can't even begin to understand inside their minds. Even when you're standing there going like, I don't know why they're acting like that, you have to take a step back and be forgiving. Sometimes they just act out because of their trauma, and it's not anything personal. A lot of the times it's not anything personal. It's just there's a lot going on in there and they don't know what to do with it all. So be forgiving. Still make sure they know the expectations, but don't hold it against them that they're having this really hard time, and try to understand where they're coming from when things like that happen.
Low-key, you're preaching to me, because it's like, why are you acting like this? And I know like can be like really impulsive by the end of the day, but like be quick to forgive. And I try to start every day fresh, even though the student did this, and this, whatever that behavior can be the day before. It's like you acted not your best self the day before, but it's like they apologize, we gotta keep moving on, because at the end of the day, they still need to learn. They need to have the understanding like, hey, this wasn't okay. So having consequences, but still knowing that low-key, they might not be able to control it. It also may be genetic or hereditary, like you said, things that we can't even begin to understand. So they're just however 6, 7, 8 years old. Adults don't even know how to regulate their emotions, let alone children, and they're just trying to figure the world out. So forgiveness and understanding is something that low-key I need to work on.
Yeah, it's the hardest part, because even I'm sitting here some days like, what is going on with y'all? Why are you doing all this? But you have to take a step back. She just saw me a few minutes ago take a step, be like, we need to sit here and quiet for a little bit. We're all gonna reset and bring it back in, because I was starting to get to that point where even I was like, what is going on? Why are you doing this?
For sure. I had to do a whole reset video. If you haven't checked that out, I'll be sure to link that above. But just a reset, because it's even like, sometimes as students, they just know your triggers and they know what you expect and what you don't expect. So sometimes they know the button and they just keep tapping on it. But like you said, us, like low-key, like as a teacher, you have so much going on in your brain. So you're trying to regulate your own emotions, let alone theirs. And it could be a battle. So like you said, taking a step back, take 10, 20, 30 deep breaths to get yourself together and not just lash out on a student. Ms. L mentioned this before, high expectations. It's important to have high expectations no matter where our students come from and how traumatized they may be. This can be really hard, especially when you know where your students are at and where they need to be, where the state or district may want them to be. And it's just like that gap in between, not to mention COVID and other things. In my classroom, I have had to fill that buffer by knowing where they come from, being forgiving and understanding, but also knowing that they can do better no matter what the circumstances are, and to still have loving high expectations for them, because they can meet the goals, whether their home life is good or not, or whatever traumas they may have. They still need to be able to reach that goal, because I feel like if we are not, it's low-key like a disservice to them, like coddling them or showing them extra sympathy and giving them less work, because they're still not going to be able to meet those goals.
It's really important to have high expectations for their behavior and their emotional state. Now, obviously you have to be forgiving and understanding, because they are not gonna hit those high expectations right away, especially those kids who have a lot of trauma and their behavior and their emotions is how they release their trauma. So you still have to have those expectations,
think about that.
Right? At one point, you do want them to be sitting in their seat. You want them to not punch someone, to not say some mean words to someone whenever they're upset. Still be understanding and forgiving when they mess up, but help them along the way to build up to that expectation. Reminding them what the expectation is when they don't meet it, and lifting them up, giving them praise when they are starting to take those steps to those expectations that you're going to continue to hold. Sometimes you can reel it in and be like, all right, you know, today's not your day, that's fine, but always make sure that there's like an end goal that you want them to reach with dealing with their trauma and their behavior and their emotions.
I love that. Positive reinforcement, I feel like, goes a long way for them. Because I mentioned this before in another video, like, some students literally don't get told what they are doing right, let alone all these things you're doing wrong. And sometimes, especially as a teacher, you want them to be doing this, and so you focus on all the negatives, but switching it around to be positive is amazing.
The next thing is you should know their triggers, and you don't have to keep like a record or a list, but just knowing, like for one of my students, I know that if I raise my voice, he is going to immediately melt into tears.
Wow.
So I have to try and be mindful of my voice level and my yelling. Now sometimes I make mistakes, I let my voice raise, but I have to make sure that I touch base with him and I'm like, that was not directed at you. Try and reassure them and be cautious of it. Some of my kids really don't like when someone looks at them. So I have them sit in the back of the room so they are only seeing people who are looking forward, or they're sitting in the front of the room and they're only seeing me and nobody else. It's kind of hard, but you'll start to notice a pattern if you really pay attention throughout the year. And that is one way to just get ahead of outbursts and stuff like that before it even happens.
I love that, taking preventative measures instead of putting out all these little fires a day. I have a few students as well that have different triggers. I didn't realize. So yelling, it was a trigger for me, and I didn't realize until I got older, like especially playing basketball. My coaches yell, I'll immediately shut down. So even my tone of voice, I mean, I'm pretty soft-spoken, but I can get up there, especially when students are following directions. But I have to be mindful with that as well. And also, like, the lights may be triggering to some people, or like even talking about certain subjects in school. It reminds them of their past or bad things or negative. Like, you really don't know what their triggers are, but like you said, you don't have to have a list in your head, but just knowing your student, I feel like will go a long way here, and knowing what they are good at or what they're not good at and what could be triggering. I feel like we all have triggers in different ways, so knowing your students is crucial. Last but not least, we want to talk about tough love, and I just saw a prime example of this before we started recording this video, because at the end of the day, like I said, we should have high expectations, but at the end of the day, if we let them do whatever they want or just not even teach them or disregard them because of what they've been through, they're not going to get to where they need to be. So engaging in tough love, it can be some tough, hard conversations like, hey buddy, you weren't doing this right today, but guess what? Either have a behavior chart or something that shows them that they are positive and that we do love our students. At the end of the day, like, well, I feel like none of us would be here. Having that tough love and knowing that some conversations are not going to be great, not every day is going to be great, and allowing them to fail and make mistakes, which we're all human, so we all do, but showing them like, hey, having that conversation is loving, I feel like, instead of letting them do whatever they want. I totally agree, especially holding them to their expectations is a way of tough loving them. Like, I have a behavior chart with one kid, and our rule is if you get more than three or more frowning faces, you don't get a piece of candy at the end of the day. And there has been so many times where he gets 3 right off the bat in the morning, and then the rest of the day is good. But I still have to say, well, how many frowning faces do you have? And he is starting to understand that he should come in the morning ready to learn, because he can't make that up later. So I feel like holding them to their expectations is a way of tough loving them. But I also want to emphasize, even though it can be really tough, it's still love. Even after I have to tough love them, sometimes I have to bring them back and kind of show a little bit of kindness, not not holding them to their expectations anymore, but just, I'm not mad at you, you're not mad at me, what are the emotions we're feeling? That reconciliation of it, because sometimes who knows what's going on in their head, so to have that touch base point and hold them accountable, but also, like you said, a loving way. Oh, I love it. I could talk to Miss L all day long. Thank you so much for coming on our channel and sharing your expertise. Like, she's really passionate about this, and I absolutely love working with her, and I'm going to get you serious next year. So yes, you are. That's going to be exciting. But thank you so much for coming on my channel. If you guys want to add to the conversation down in the comments below, I'd love to have a conversation now with you guys. And if you want Miss L back on my channel to ask her any more questions, go ahead and leave those down below as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.